Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for joining us for day 2 of the Board of Environmental Safety meeting. I am Sheena Brooks, the board's Operations and Outreach Manager and today's board clerk. Today, we are joined by the following Board of Environmental Safety staff, both in person and remotely on Zoom: Swati Sharma, Executive Officer; Sheena Avila, Staff Engineer; Lauren Chandler, Ombuds; Alicia Delphin, Administrative Liaison; Greg Forrest, Board Counsel; Linda Ocampo, Senior Staff Engineer; Firdos Permirza, Environmental Program Manager; and Marcus Raymond, Senior Environmental Scientist. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Your continued participation is acknowledgement that you are being recorded. Today is February 6, 2026 at 9 a.m., and the meeting is now called to order.
Thank you, Sheena. Please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair Rickstraw. Member Brostrom?
Here.
Member Gomez?
Here.
Vice Chair Strauss-Hacker?
Here.
Chair Rickstraw?
Here.
All members are present and a quorum is established. I will now review some logistical items. Today's hybrid meeting is being held both in person and remotely via Zoom and phone. For those joining us on Zoom, please select either English or Spanish as your preferred language option by clicking the interpretation icon located at the bottom of your Zoom toolbar. If you don't see the icon, you might need to update your Zoom application. Next slide. If anyone experiences connectivity issues with Zoom, you can call in for either English or Spanish. The phone numbers are provided to you now on the slide. They will be provided in the Zoom chat, and they are also posted on our website. Next slide. Agenda times may fluctuate to accommodate agenda items. Meeting materials are available on the registration table outside the entrance of the room. And they can also be found on our website at bes.dtsc.ca.gov/next-meeting. To protect everyone's virtual space and networks, the Q&A function will serve as our chat feature. It will be used for individuals that are experiencing technical difficulties or are unable to make verbal comments. If you wish to have your written Q&A comment read out loud during a public comment session, please begin your comment with "please read aloud." To ensure that all board members are fully present and focused on today's presentations and discussions, they are not reading or following along in the chat or Q&A. All participants will remain muted until a Zoom host unmutes them once recognized. Only presenters' videos and screens will be shared. We are looking forward to hearing from the public throughout the meeting and have scheduled times on the agenda to do so. There are several different ways in which you can participate. For those joining us on Zoom, please raise your virtual hand on your Zoom toolbar or press *9 on your phone. I will call on participants using their name as displayed on Zoom, and I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names. If you have joined the Spanish channel, please wait for the interpreters to provide instructions. For those commenting in Spanish, time will be doubled to allow for translation. Our public forum for items not on the agenda will be agenda item number 5, and that will be held at approximately 11 a.m. If you would like to express your comment in writing, you may submit your comment via email to besinfo@bes.dtsc.ca.gov. That concludes the introductory review for today's meeting. I will now hand it over to Chair Rickstraw for agenda item number 2.
Thank you very much, Sheena, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 2 of the Board of Environmental Safety meeting. For those of us who are joining remotely and are new to the Board of Environmental Safety is a 5-member board created by Senate Bill 158 in 2021, which enacted fiscal and regulatory reforms to the Department of Toxic Substances Control to improve its transparency, accountability, and fiscal stability. The board members here represent the general public interest, protect public health, and reduce risks of toxic exposure with a particular focus on disproportionately burdened and vulnerable communities. We appreciate your participation here today as we work collectively to achieving the goals and objectives in SB 158. So turning to today's agenda, we will start off with an executive officer report presented by our executive officer, Swati Sharma, and our ombuds, Lauren Chandler. Lauren will start off on action items with an action items update from our recent board meetings, and then Executive Officer Sharma will give her report, including the board's considerations of our 2026 priorities. We will also hear reports from our board members under this agenda item as well. After that, DTSC Deputy Director Robin Christensen, and Supervising Hazardous Substances Engineer Michael Ernst will provide us with a Safer Consumer Products Program overview. This is intended to inform the board's development of metrics for the Safer Consumer Products Program. For agenda item number 5, this is public forum for items not in the agenda. As Sheena mentioned, this is scheduled to begin at approximately 11 a.m. We will then close out the day with Vice Chair Strauss-Hacker reviewing the action items from yesterday and today's meeting. So moving right into agenda item number 3, I'd like to introduce our Executive Officer, Swati Sharma, and our Ombuds, Lauren Chandler. Lauren, over to you.
Can you hear me? Okay, awesome. Good morning. There were several action items recorded from the board for DTSC, a few for the board, and 3 items received from the public for follow-up during the public meetings held on August 27th and November 17th of last year. Next slide. Before I begin with DTSC's items, I'd like to clarify how the status of each item is logged in our system. When an item is initially received, it's considered open. Once DTSC or BES has responded, the status will change depending on that response. Items logged as in progress are things that are being worked on but are expected to be complete and require additional follow-up. On hold refers to items that were started but for any number of reasons are unable to move forward and will be revisited at a later date. Ongoing generally refers to action items that aren't necessarily issues for resolution, but rather items that will be addressed at repeated intervals. And of course, our favorite status, complete, meaning the item will no longer be tracked. Next slide. In August, Chair Rakestraw asked for more information about the number of DTSC's vacancies that are actively recruiting. While 112 positions were swept due to budget constraints, the Director's Office let us know that as of August of last year, there were 142 open positions, but hiring has continued, so that number is likely lower. We encourage everyone to check out the CalCareers website for the latest job availability at DTSC, and this item is logged as complete. Next slide. Member Bhatia requested information about the support DTSC provides to businesses, permit holders, and fee payers to help them to be in compliance with regulations. The Hazardous Waste Management Program, the Regulatory Assistance Office, and the Division of Financial Planning all currently have many ways in which they provide support and guidance, including toll-free hotlines, educational materials regarding HWMP requirements, and various informational websites on topics from permitting and support for fee payers to information on virtual workshops. The regulated community is welcome to reach out to any of these programs for more information, or feel free to contact the Ombuds Office to be referred. This item is logged as complete. Next slide. Vice Chair Strauss-Hacker asked for DTSC's timeline on digitizing the permit application process. The Director's Office responded that they were preparing to finalize funding and contracting for system upgrades in September of last year, planning to complete system upgrades with the consultant by March of this year, and the electronic submittal of information rulemaking is already underway internally. DTSC expects to complete the rulemaking package for adoption so that they are in effect near December of 2026. This item is currently logged as in progress. Next slide. Member Gomez requested information on any feedback received from the roundtable discussion with the Berkeley Center for Green Chemistry to discuss advancements in the evaluation and selection of safer chemicals for consumer products through meaningful community engagement. The roundtable consisted of industry leaders, alternatives assessment experts, environmental justice advocates, and government regulators to explore the incorporation of EJ considerations in the process. Links to the roundtable recording and a summary of the discussion were sent to Member Gomez, and this item is logged as complete. Next slide. During the November public meeting, Vice Chair Strauss-Hacker asked for the DTSC senior management team to report back to the board on their efforts to digitize the administrative record. DTSC has indicated that there will continue to be internal discussion, so this item is logged as ongoing. Next slide. Moving on to the action items for BES at the August and November board meetings. Next slide. Member Brostrom and Member Gomez requested an internal discussion on the scope and jurisdiction of the board moving forward, including how to engage with the legislature about it and possibly forming a work group for long-range planning. These will be continuing discussions within the board, so this item is logged as ongoing. Next slide. Vice Chair Strauss-Hacker requested that information for any upcoming workshops on vapor intrusion be published on our website, and a link to the Master DTSC calendar of events was added to the BES website. This item is complete. Next slide. During the November public meeting, Member Gomez requested an agenda item to discuss qualitative metrics that incorporate public feedback and can be updated prior to board meetings. This is currently an ongoing internal discussion and has been logged as such. Next slide. Moving on to the inquiries received from the public at August's board meeting. Next slide. At the August public meeting, Mr. Eric Nolan from Stewarding Design asked for an interactive web-based dashboard from DTSC where permit status could be made available to the public. The Director's Office responded with a link to the current dashboard, which provides comprehensive information about the status of each permit decision, estimated dates for milestones in the permitting process, and links to the documents submitted by the applicant. The website also includes the name of the project manager at DTSC, who will take calls and emails from the public to answer questions or incorporate feedback from them while reviewing permit applications. This information was forwarded to Mr. Nolan, and this item is considered complete. Next slide. Also at the August meeting, Linnea Norby with Air Force Plant 42 in Palmdale asked for some clarification between RCRA and non-RCRA hazardous waste fees. Some information from CDTFA and the online code of federal regulations was emailed to Ms. Norby, and this item is now logged as complete. Next slide. Our final item from August came from Ed Mitchell of the community group Never Again Moss Landing, who requested a face-to-face meeting with the board to discuss corrective action items from the Moss Landing fire. This item addresses a complex issue and is part of an ongoing internal discussion between DTSC leadership and the board. Next slide. For information about the Ombuds program, upcoming BES meetings, or general information about the board, please visit our website as www.bes.dtsc.ca.gov. Thank you for your attention.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so today I will cover a few items, board and hiring updates, the 2026 board meeting dates, as well as an update on permit appeals. And after that, I will share the BES 2026 priorities. Next slide, please. As Chair Rakestraw mentioned yesterday, we have a new board member, Governor appointee Reese Williams, who will join us at a future board meeting. Today, we also have a new hire, board liaison Alicia Delphin, who is at the registration table. Alicia is the administrative liaison, where she supports the board with day-to-day coordination, operations, and communication. She brings a strong background in organization, public service, and working with diverse groups. Alicia is excited to be part of the board's work and looks forward to supporting its mission to protect public health and the environment. Next slide, please. We currently have multiple permit appeals. The first one, FiberTech permit renewal. We have 2 appeals filed, which are pending. We also have the EcoBat Resources permit renewal, which has multiple appeals filed. For up-to-date information about the status of both of these appeals, please visit our website as well as the full docket and additional information at our BES website, where there's a drop-down menu for permit appeals. Next slide, please. This is our tentative 2026 board meeting schedule. This may move around primarily due to either hearing room availability or the shifting schedule for permit appeals. Please check our website for the most up-to-date information regarding our dates as well as location. But for right now, here is our tentative schedule for the year. Right, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay, so now I'm going to review our 2026 priorities for the board. Now, this does not encompass everything that our board and board staff works on, but it's a snapshot of what the priorities are, and this largely stems from the requirements that are listed out in SB 158 for the board. Next slide, please. So first, to conduct public board meetings and workshops. Our goal is to conduct 6 to 7 hybrid board meetings and workshops throughout the year to promote public attendance and to foster transparency and accountability. Our board meetings are the primary platform for public engagement with the board, as well as DTSC leadership on key priorities. They enable the public to hear directly from DTSC leadership, provide input, and engage with BES as well as the board. Next slide, please. To ensure a fair, timely, and transparent permit appeal process. So to hear and decide appeals of hazardous waste facility permit decisions. The board anticipates administering appeals of 2 to 3 new permitting decisions in 2026, and this is in addition to the current docket of appeals of the 2 past permitting decisions from 2025. The board would also like to ensure that the permit appeal process is publicly accessible, including updating the BES website and working with DTSC in making administrative records digitally accessible to all parties. In addition, to respond to PRA requests and ongoing litigation in a timely manner. Next slide, please. Our next priority is hazardous waste fees. So the board is responsible for establishing fee rates as required by regulation to fund DTSC and board operations. In addition, we'll hold public workshops and meet with stakeholders to gather input on the fee rate setting process. In addition, this year, the board has begun work on fee structure analysis. So we will be working with DTSC to conduct an analysis of the current fee structure based on the requirements that are laid out in SB 158 and identify recommendations, amongst other things, as related to fee structure analysis. Next slide, please. Performance measurement and strategic planning. The board has been working on performance metrics, and we will continue to work on performance metrics and collaborate with DTSC to define and evaluate performance metrics for each of DTSC's programs. In 2026, the board will continue working on metrics for safer consumer products, and later in the year, we will start the work on site mitigation programs. In addition, the board will continue to track the metrics that were set last year for the hazardous waste management programs and will report back at these board meetings. Next slide, please. Based off of the last board meeting, the board will retain oversight of DTSC's implementation of the hazardous waste management plan and will assist DTSC in development of the 2028 hazardous waste management plan. In addition, the board will review documents and presentations as they are related to the plan, as well as the 2026 hazardous waste management report. Next slide, please. Strategic planning. So beginning in 2026, the board will work with DTSC on a multi-year schedule for the discussion of long-term goals for certain DTSC activities in consultation with the director. We'll also review and consider for approval DTSC Director's 2026-27 priorities and receive regular progress reports from the director at board meetings on achieving these priorities. Next slide, please. As the board did yesterday, we will continue an evaluation and prepare an annual evaluation for DTSC's programs and submit this to the Secretary of Environmental Protection Agency, and also appear when requested before the legislative policy committees to provide an update on DTSC's performance as compared to its objectives. Next slide, please. We will continue to advance meaningful public engagement and participation. So ensure early, transparent, and inclusive engagement, particularly in environmental justice communities through outreach, site tours, direct communication channels such as our ombuds programs, as well as meeting with board members and BES staff. So we'll continue ombuds program outreach. We'll continue to engage with community members, organizations, and regulated community through meetings and conduct site tours of facilities and cleanup sites. Next slide, please. Our next priority is to continue the relationship with the EJAC committee. So to monitor EJAC's progress, hear updates on EJAC priorities, as we did yesterday from the EJAC co-chairs, and have them present at regular board meetings, and vice versa, have BES present at the EJAC meetings as well. And engage with the EJAC to finalize its work plan and collaborate with EJAC on selected DTSC and BES priorities. Next slide, please. Similarly, as we heard yesterday around the Cleanup in Vulnerable Communities Initiative annual report, the board will continue to analyze CVCI expenditures, assess CVCI's performance, and provide recommendations to the legislature for future cleanup initiatives. Next slide. We'll also continue site-specific engagement, maintain engagement on Exide, SSFL, and other priority sites, ensure transparency and progress towards cleanup sites, and facilitate coordination between DTSC and affected communities. Next slide. And lastly, continue to strengthen BES's team effectiveness, collaboration, and performance. We'll continue to grow our BES team, as well as support the effectiveness to the board oversight and decision-making. We'll foster a culture of accountability, mutual respect, and continuous improvements of the BES team, promote clarity, alignment, and consistency on how BES carries out its responsibilities, and support effective collaboration and communication. As I shared, we are a small team with many responsibilities. This is just a snippet into the priorities, but there are a multitude of additional items that the board and BES staff work on throughout the year. And this may shift and change depending on shifting priorities that may come up mid-year. But board, these are the priorities that are laid out in SB 158. Hand it back to you, Chair Rakestraw.
Thank you very much, EO Sharma and our ombuds, Lauren Chandler, for those updates. Before we open it up for board discussion and then public comment, why don't we go ahead and do our board member reports. So this is just kind of going down the line. If there's anything that you would like to update other board members on or the public about any of your activities, either since the last board meeting or any that are ongoing, we can start there. So why don't we, I don't know if we want to start with Member Gomez.
Yeah, and I apologize. I don't have my work computer, so I don't have my notes for Exide conversation. But I did want to pull out and make a share that there will be a Exide public meeting happening. It's going to be both in person and hybrid on February 12th at 6 p.m. And this is just part of the engagement that DTSC has. This will be a touch point with the community in terms of what's going on and keeping folks inform, the meeting's going to be located at the Huntington Park City Hall chambers once again on February 12th at 6 p.m. It will also be available, people can participate via webinar, via Zoom. That's all I have, and I apologize.
Thanks, Member Gomez. Vice Chair Stassacker, anything? No. Member Brostrom?
So I had a couple of meetings with stakeholders, met with Clean Harbors to have a meet and greet and hear a little bit about their experiences with DTSC and operations. Had meetings with the EJAC co-chairs to hear about progress, on some of their subcommittees, governance and work planning, as well as how their experience has been working with DTSC. We have a tour of the Clean Harbors facility coming up next month. So looking forward to that. And I think that's all that I have. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Member Brostrom. And then I'll go ahead and jump in for myself. Let's see. I have, similarly to Member Brostrom, have had engagement with the EJAC co-chairs. That's the first item. I received also a briefing from DTSC's CFO on the BCPs that were recently put in the January budget from the governor. Just to flag, I have my confirmation hearing before the Senate Rules Committee, which is next Wednesday, February 11th. So have been doing a lot of work preparing for that. As I mentioned yesterday, I have now joined the Hazardous Waste Management Program Subcommittee. And then finally, just to add on to what Member Brostrom was saying, I will also be joining a tour of the Clean Harbors facility in Button Willow at the beginning of March as well. I'm looking forward to that. I think that's all from me on the board updates. So why don't we go ahead and open it up for board discussion on anything that you've heard from either Swathi, Lauren, or any of the other board members before we then open it up for public comment. Yeah, please, Member Brostrom.
Just one quick note about the schedule and the dates. Just wanting to make a plug for the Central Valley. I'm sure that it is on the list, but wanted to express the importance of making sure that we make it to the Central Valley, particularly given some of the decisions around Button Willow and Kettleman this year, as well as offer support with finding a location. So, thank you.
We do have tours scheduled for you for Button Willow, and I know both you and Chair Rakestraw also toured Kettleman. So while we will, I think a lot of our focus has been permit appeals and making sure that we're in community for those permit appeals. We will try to make a board meeting in Central Valley, but if not, at the very least, we have schedules for board members to go and do tours and engagements and others, but I completely hear you on that.
Any other board discussion? Similarly, any other board input on the BES priorities that Executive Officer Sharma put forward? Because that's something that we will vote on after public comment. All right. I don't have anything additional myself. So why don't we go ahead and Sheena, can you please open it up for public comment?
Thank you, Chair Rakestraw. We will now open the floor for public comment regarding agenda item number 3, the Executive Officer Report. For all public commenters, if you would like to be identified for the record, please state your name and affiliation, and you will all have 3 minutes to make your comment. I will start with our in-person participants. If there is anyone in the room that would like to make a comment, please make your way to the podium.
Good morning. I'm Angela Johnson-Mazzaros from Earth Justice. Excited to be back for a second day. I wanted to note three things. First, sort of as a reflection of the thing that I noted yesterday when we looked at the review of the department. I'd like to note that here, I'm also struck by the feeling that this is a continuous to-do list and not I don't understand the frame. Chair Rakestraw, as you noted this morning, the board has a very particular directive and statute. You're to represent general public interest and, importantly, act to protect public health and reduce risk of toxic exposures with a particular focus on disproportionately burdened and vulnerable communities. And to be candid, when I look at this list, it's not clear to me how this list of activities, although I am sure that it takes a lot of work and effort, it's not clear to me how it results in action that reduces or protects public health. And I guess I associate that with reducing exposures. So to the extent that what we get to engage with in order to talk with the board about what it intends to do next year, it feels difficult to really understand what will happen and therefore to provide any kind of important or meaningful comment, which takes me to my second point. So I would just want to note that slide 8 outlined advancing meaningful public engagement and participation. And you already know I have a particular pet peeve about the notion that 3 minutes is what we get. But more broadly, I guess I'm curious, what does meaningful look like to the board? It's one thing for me to come to Sacramento and talk for 3 minutes. It's also, I guess, another thing for me who has quite the fortunate position of having a full-time job that includes, but is not as exclusively, working on these issues, to be able to engage with you. But I wonder what it means for the public more broadly, those people who are actually living on the front lines. So I note again, as I have before, that it is 9:31 on a Friday morning, and it's difficult for me to understand what meaningful means to the board based on observing the board's behaviors. And so my final point is, I'm curious about what the metrics are for the board. This is supposed to be a project that's about engagement and accountability, and I don't understand how to analyze that, how to look at that, how
Please
to
wrap up
think
your
about
comment.
that. And so I would encourage the board to think about how we can decide and how we can jointly know whether or not the board is achieving its goals. And finally, I know that I'm at my time, but I will just note that I'm also very interested in continuity. I cannot help but note that we had a board member whisked away and somebody else will show up. And there are promises about things that will happen, but it's not clear to me how those proceed as you have more board members show up and things come up. And so I'm interested to know how the board will formulate policies that allow these to continue forward. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Are there any additional in-person commenters? Seeing none in person. For our Zoom participants, if you would like to comment on this agenda item, please raise your virtual hands. Seeing no hands raised, Spanish interpreters, please let me know if there are any comments in the Spanish room. Thank you, Aldo. Chair Rakestraw, that concludes this agenda item's public comment period.
Thank you very much, Sheena, and thank you to the public commenter. So we'll now open it up for board consideration of the BES priorities. If there's any additional board discussion that board members would like to have, either reflecting upon the presentations or public comments, we can do that now before we hear a motion. Or if there's a motion, we can go ahead and hear that right now. So I'll stop for a moment.
Just one comment, particularly given the conversation we had yesterday about the evaluation. I note here that kind of this lays out that the performance reviews of DTSC's programs will be measured against the 2025 and 26 objectives. I know this doesn't say director's priorities, but just wanting to make sure that we have the flexibility of making some of the changes we talked about yesterday. So this might already do it, but just wanting to just make sure that we're not committing ourselves to any particular pathway.
Yeah, the requirement in SB 158 is that the board do an evaluation of DTSC's programs compared to its objectives, and it's up to you all and how you interpret that. But yes, there's plenty of room to change how we do this process.
Any other reflections from other board members, or do we have a motion that a board member would like to make with respect to the 2026 priorities?
Chair Rakestraw, I move that we approve the Board of Environmental Safety 2026 priorities.
I'll second.
Thanks. We have a motion to approve the 2026 priorities from Vice Chair Strauss-Hacker and a second from Member Brostrom. Any further discussion? Any amendments? If none, will Sheena, you please call a vote?
Thank you, Chair Rakestraw. Board members in support of the motion, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes with all board members present, Chair Rakestraw.
Thank you very much, Sheena. And just to respond to the public comment from Angela, I mean, I think, these are all very good points. I don't have a deep response at the moment. I mean, I have my initial ideas, but in particular, public engagement is a critical priority for the board. And so really welcome any additional ideas or thoughts about how to do that more effectively. I know our board members and board staff think about that a lot, but we're very open to that particular issue, of course. So we'll go ahead and move into item number 4, the Safer Consumer Products Program overview. We're a bit ahead of schedule. I don't know if we have the right people. I see Michael in the audience here. Okay, so I'd like to invite DTSC Deputy Director Robin Christensen and Supervising Hazardous Substances Engineer Michael Ernst to join us at the podium for the Safer Consumer Products Program overview.
Chair Rakestraw, if I may, could I suggest we just take a quick 5-minute break?
Yeah, absolutely. Are we, Sharma or Sheena, are we waiting for Robin? Is that? Oh, we're waiting for Robin. Oh, okay. Well, sorry, I didn't know that. Yeah, let's go ahead and let's take a 10-minute break, and then we'll reconvene at 50 after. 45 after. Sheena, over to you.
Thank you, Chair Rakestraw. We will take a 15-minute break. Okay, and we will return at 9:45. 9:50. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We will be starting again with all board members present. Chair Rakestraw.
Thank you very much, Sheena. So we'll now move into agenda item number 4, which is this overview of the Safer Consumer Products Program. I'd like to invite DTSC Deputy Director Robin Christensen and Supervising Hazardous Substances Engineer Michael Ernst to join us at the podium for the Safer Consumer Products Program overview. Senate Bill 158 requires the board to set performance metrics for each of the department's programs. Last year, the board established performance metrics for the Hazardous Waste Management Program. This year, another board member and I will meet with department staff and others regarding the Safer Consumer Products Program to establish clear performance metrics. We will also be engaging the public in this effort as well, including by soliciting public comments here today, recognizing that we are early in this process and there will be additional opportunities for public comment. So, Deputy Director, over to you.
Thank you, Chair Rakestraw. Thank you, members of the board and members of the public who are here today and listening in online. My name is Robin Christensen, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Safer Consumer Products Program. Before I dive in, I want to give a little bit of background about SCP, or the Safer Consumer Products Program's origins. There are about 85,000 chemicals which are in commerce across the world currently today, and about 2,500 new chemicals are introduced every year. Many of these chemicals have had some evaluation of their potential for adverse impacts, but too few have been fully studied and evaluated for the potential for harm for humans, wildlife, and the environment. History is littered with examples of learning too late about the adverse impacts of chemicals. And so without a precautionary approach, it can take decades to identify some of these adverse impacts, and worse, action to ban chemicals can come at a price, or what we refer to as regrettable substitutions, where those replacements have other adverse impacts which may be just as bad or worse. So one example of this is the example of chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs, which were found responsible for the destruction of the ozone layer. Many manufacturers then moved from CFCs to PFASs, or forever chemicals. So we solved for one problem and then created another. Back in 2004, recognizing the complexity of this and recognizing that regrettable substitutions and the need for a science-driven approach, the legislature commissioned the University of California to identify solutions for the state to adopt. Their work formed the basis for the 2008 California Green Chemistry Law, otherwise known as AB 1879 and SB 509. AB 1879 mandated that the Department of Toxic Substances Control establish a regulatory process for identifying and prioritizing chemicals of concern in consumer products. And critically, DTSC was also tasked with identifying a process for evaluating the alternatives with a goal of preventing regrettable substitutions. SB 509 tasked the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment with evaluating hazard criteria for DTSC to consider in its work, and asked that DTSC provide information to the public on toxic chemicals. The Green Chemistry Law laid the foundation for our work, and then 14 years later, SB 502 expanded those authorities to create a new pathway to impact, which streamlines our work and allows SCP to skip the alternatives analysis pathway when significant information is known about the already existing alternatives. Our regulations further specify how we implement these authorities. Our mission is informed by our authority and the goals of the Green Chemistry Law. At our core, we are an innovation and market shifting program that works to advance the design, the development, and the use of products that are chemically safer for people and the environment. Our three goals here each carry equal weight. We aim to reduce hazardous chemicals in consumer products. We aim to increase the adoption of green chemistry principles so that there are safer alternatives available. And we aim to reduce regrettable substitutions. So what is a consumer product? The statutory definition of consumer product is here on the screen. And what I'd like to draw your attention to is that it is a broad definition here. It is any product or any part of the product that is used, bought, leased for use by any person for any purpose. This includes both the things that we buy off the shelf at the store and also products that are sold business to business. It includes products that are assembled, products that are formulated, or any part of those products that are assembled or formulated. Our authority requires that we work primarily with manufacturers. However, importers, distributors, and retailers may have some obligations under our framework. This specifically comes into play when the manufacturers are either non-responsive or non-compliant. So I'd like to give you an overview of our organizational chart, as I think this provides some insight into how our work flows through the process. SCP consists of 75 positions, which are organized into 3 branches. At the start of the slide and at the start of our workflow is the Chemical and Product Evaluation branch. This branch oversees our policies related to the candidate chemicals list, the product chemical evaluation, the identification and prioritization of products, and we lean into data science, and we rely heavily on toxicology and our exposure scientists through this work. In the middle is our core branch, the Communication, Operations, Rulemaking, and Economic Analysis branch. and they are the core of SCP with their fingers in every part of our process from beginning to end. These units are often consultants, and they are supporting different parts of the project at key points in time. So for example, they govern the processes over communications in our environmental justice work. They oversee our business operations. They oversee rulemaking and policy, and they guide our economic analysis and market research efforts, which also feeds into rulemaking as well. Finally, we come to the ARC branch, or the Alternatives Analysis, Regulatory Response and Compliance and Enforcement branch. Everything, the common theme here in the ARC branch is compliance. Because we are a compliance-oriented program, these teams work to ensure that there is compliance among manufacturers with the process of alternatives analyses, with our administrative requirements, and they work to support manufacturers for compliance with our regulatory response options. This branch is also responsible for our compliance efforts where we work to investigate and evaluate compliance with the SCP regulations and our priority product listings. Our 75 positions are roughly split through each of these three branches, and we have a range of classifications providing expertise in a number of different areas for the program. One thing that I do want to make sure I make you aware of is that we are matrix organized. This means that staff in each of our units, each of these branches do have the ability, they have opportunities to work across the project spectrum from research all the way through to compliance. This allows us to be agile and to be flexible when needed. Here is a high-level summary of the standard framework regulations. Article 2 of the SCP regulations defines our candidate chemicals list, which provides the menu of chemicals that we can consider for evaluation in products. The CCL, or Candidate Chemicals List, is made up of nearly 3,000 chemicals which are listed as a concern by one or more authoritative bodies. Article 3 specifies the process of researching, identifying, and prioritizing product chemical combinations which, through rulemaking, become priority products. Our goal here is to identify the combinations with the potential for exposure and the potential for significant or widespread adverse impacts. Article 5 describes the alternatives analysis process, and this is a unique component for SCP. The manufacturers are actually tasked with evaluating the safer alternatives, and they do this under the guidance and technical assistance of the Safer Consumer Products team. The purpose here is for the manufacturer to lead by identifying the potential alternatives, and our definition of alternative is broad. It can include chemical replacement, removal, reduction, or engineered solutions to mitigate adverse impacts. Article 6 describes our regulatory responses, and once a manufacturer has completed the alternatives analysis process, SCP is then tasked with identifying appropriate regulatory responses to protect human health and the environment. This is a different way of viewing that standard regulatory framework, and I think it more accurately reflects the workflow through the program. You'll see that I've split up the priority product process into two different steps. There's first research and then rulemaking, which transitions into alternatives analysis and regulatory response. I do want to highlight here that compliance efforts are cross-cutting. Once rulemaking goes into effect and a priority product has been listed, there are multiple opportunities for the ARC branch to conduct different forms of compliance efforts, whether that's providing compliance assurance by testing and evaluating products, or whether it's supporting manufacturers so that they can be compliant with our administrative requirements or alternatives analysis process. As I said at the top, we also have a new pathway available to us, and this is the direct to regulatory response pathway. Within this framework, we would skip the alternatives analysis step, and we do this specifically for those situations where there are already reputable, reliable, and sufficient information regarding the alternatives available on the market. In this situation, we are conducting research that examines the chemicals and the products, and in the form of rulemaking, we take the regulatory response into consideration at the point of rulemaking. But our framework is also flexible. So there are situations where manufacturers may make a voluntary shift in the market to remove or to replace a chemical, rather than proceed through the AA process. This was an option that was intentionally built into our framework because there are those manufacturers who are often leading the way in terms of identifying safer alternatives or have a pathway to remove the chemical of concern from the product. The challenge with this scenario is that we may have less insight into the replacement chemical or whether a replacement chemical was even identified. Should this occur, we do have the authority to request information from manufacturers directly, and we also have the ability to work with DTSC's environmental chemistry lab to test product samples. Similarly, there is a market shift that can occur so quickly and so completely that it causes SCP to pause and evaluate whether rulemaking is still warranted. Consider that one of our key prioritization principles is that we must demonstrate the potential for exposure to the chemical. And if a voluntary market shift has been made so completely across the entire market, the exposure may actually drop pretty substantially. So in this situation, SCP adopts a philosophy of monitor and verify, where we monitor the market as our resources allow and as data availability allow for. We would do this, for example, to ensure that the market shift truly is consistent both across the entire market and also over time. And if we do identify an uneven playing field sort of situation, we would be able to act through regulation to level the field. And finally, SCP research has also been used by others to inform and to influence the development of legislation. So I've given you a few different pathways, high-level overview of our regulatory framework and how it can play out in reality. But I do want to dive a little bit deeper into our prioritization and research process because it's so critical for our everyday work. SCP has a broad scope and potential. We can cover all consumer products and thousands of candidate chemicals. But at the end of the day, we are like any other program, and we need to prioritize and focus our scope and resources. We do this in a few ways, and one of the primary tools that we use for prioritization is our 3-year work plan, which defines a narrower set of product categories for SCP to evaluate to identify product chemical combinations. The development of this 3-year work plan is shaped by our program and department priorities, as well as by public input. For our most recent work plan, SCP expanded our approach to maximize early engagement in the development of the work plan. And in doing so, we reached out to 74 contacts, held 18 meetings, and received written feedback from many others. We specifically sought input from a range of backgrounds, including NGOs, environmental justice organizations, tribes, and academics. Now, our work plan holds us accountable to a narrower scope of product categories, and our candidate chemicals list defines the chemicals that we can evaluate. But the core of our prioritization process begins during the research phase. First, the team conducts preliminary research to identify the potential product chemical combinations and to also take some time to identify the missing information that we may need to proceed to rulemaking. Then we work with manufacturers, with researchers, and with other interested parties to help fill in those data gaps and learn everything that we can about the market, the product, and the scope. This is what we call our pre-regulatory engagement, and it always involves the release of at least 1 and sometimes 2 documents, a virtual workshop, and opportunities for public comment. We announce these on our website and through our listserv and also through targeted outreach. And finally, with input from many parties, and following an evaluation of the feasibility and alignment of the potential priority product, We then prioritize the specific product chemical combinations for rulemaking. That rulemaking stage also has very specific opportunities for public comment and input, and those could also lead to further adjustments in scope or in the definitions that we use to define the product. But the reason that we lead so heavily with pre-regulatory engagement and why it's such a critical component of our work is to prevent the need for those changes during rulemaking. Here are SCP's 9 adopted priority products, and I'm not going to read through all of them, but this will serve as the background for what I hope will be a way of showing our acceleration of our efforts. These products have made it all the way through from research to rulemaking, and it does not include those research projects that may have resulted in either pre-regulatory market shifts or legislative bans. One of the main criticisms that we have heard over the years is that SCP is not producing enough. And I do understand why it appears that way. In our first 10 years following the adoption of our framework regulations, SCP produced less than 1 priority product per year. But in its first 10 years, SCP also had fewer than 30 positions. And this small team was in the very unique position of building a program from scratch with no federal models to turn to, no other state agencies doing similar work. This required the development of new strategies, new approaches, and new procedures. And it also involved significant education for the responsible entities that we would be working with. And now today, I'm in the very fortunate position of being able to report out on the successes of SCP now with all of the benefits that have resulted from that foundational work and with the benefits that we've received from reform. Today, SCP is doing more pre-regulatory research. We are listing more priority products, and also for the very first time, we are leaning into the post-regulatory work, the alternatives analysis, the compliance and enforcement, and helping to support manufacturers towards innovation and safer products. These 3 currently proposed priority products are evidence of the acceleration of our work. Here's another way to look at it. In the current fiscal year, we will initiate rulemaking for twice the number of priority products as we did in the past 3 years combined. From my perspective, the key task in front of SCP now is not to continue accelerating per se, but to find and maintain this productive pace so that we can continue a sustainable, steady, and consistent path forward across the finish line for more projects. Now, SCP is a unique program with the precautionary principle built into the very fiber of our work, stretching all the way back to the foundation of the California Green Chemistry Law. We are mandated by statute to lead with a precautionary and preventive approach. We call this our hazard-based approach. But because we are so unique, we have had to heavily emphasize education and engagement for industry. Manufacturers are often unfamiliar with our approach, which can lead to concerns around regulatory and business uncertainty. One key point of friction that we have faced is the misperception that SCP's mission is to ban chemicals or the sale of products. But a ban, particularly when no alternative exists, can lead to those regrettable substitutions and would be counter to our overall goals and mission. We are designed to be collaborative, with manufacturers playing a key role in analyzing and selecting for alternatives. While SCP provides those guide rails and guidance, manufacturers take the lead in their area of expertise, which is product development, design, and reformulation. And so we lead with proactive engagement alongside our research, and all of this takes a great deal of time to do right. But it's critical work for SCP to be doing so that we can drive innovation, so that we can create opportunities for green chemistry and safer alternatives, so that we can lift up opportunities for the market leaders and change makers, and so that we can use our regulatory authority where needed alongside outreach, education, and partnerships to protect public health and the environment. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Michael, who will talk to us about metrics.
Thank you, Robin. Good morning, Chair Rakestraw and members of the board. My name is Mike Lernst. I'm a supervising engineer with the Safer Consumer Products Program, and I'm also part of the team that's working with the subcommittee to develop our metrics. While we're still early in this process, our team has done a tremendous amount of work, and more importantly, a tremendous amount of thought into how best to measure safer consumer products performance and to tell our story. What I'll be presenting today are some preliminary insights into our work, including the approach we're taking, our progress so far, and some examples of what may result. We started by establishing a set of guiding principles, defining what our ideal metrics should be. These principles have and will continue to serve as our North Star as we develop proposed metrics and weigh the relative strengths and weaknesses against each other. First, our metrics must go beyond counting for counting's sake. They need to be directly tied to our statutory goals and mission and signal real progress towards chemically safer products. What's being measured and why also needs to be clearly understood, not just by external parties, but also ourselves. They need to be things that we can influence and be based on reliable data that is practical to gather, track, and analyze consistently over time without excessive cost or burden. And finally, our overall suite of metrics need to combine to give a comprehensive view of our program, including a mix of process, output, and outcome measures covering efficiency, effectiveness, equity, and transparency. Using these principles, we also developed a series of themes or broad categories of things that should be measured. Our regulatory pathways are always going to be a core part of what we do. However, as Deputy Christensen pointed out, they're not the only way to chemically safer products. These non-regulatory pathways play a significant role in advancing our mission, and it's important that our metrics capture them as well. In a moment, I'll be presenting some example metrics of what metrics might look like for each of these themes. Before I do, I need to stress that they are just examples. We haven't made any decisions about how many metrics we will have overall or how many per theme. And the wording, structure, and especially specifics like numbers will assuredly change. I also need to point out that our list of themes is still under consideration, and we may revise or add to them as we move further in the process. Our first example is an output metric tied to our regulatory process, and it's representative of the kinds of metrics most people are familiar with. It's also similar to one of our existing metrics, the number of product regulations initiated or adopted. The second example is a process metric designed to measure efficiency, and in this case, a specific part of our regulatory process. These kinds of metrics are widely applicable, and it's possible we will have multiple metrics like this measuring different parts of our process and potentially other kinds of projects associated with non-regulatory pathways. The third example is an outcome metric that can be used to measure the effectiveness and impact of our program. It's also applicable to a variety of pathways, including voluntary market shifts. And finally, the last example is one way where we may be able to measure equity and transparency through tracking engagement opportunities. We are also looking for feasible ways where we can evaluate the quality of our engagement efforts, not just the quantity. In the coming months, we will continue to refine our concepts with the subcommittee, including seeking input from external parties. We will then present draft metrics to the board and public for feedback and use the comments received to finalize our metrics before submitting them for approval. We currently do not have a set timeline for accomplishing these steps. However, we are committed to moving forward efficiently and giving this effort the time, energy, and attention it needs to be successful. That concludes our presentation. I thank you for your time and attention, and we welcome the board's questions.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the presentation, Deputy Director and Michael. Very thorough, clear. I thought it was quite excellent. So why don't we go ahead and open it up for board discussion? Any clarifying questions, any comments, anything board members would like to add? So who wants to kick us off? Yeah, please go, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Terrific presentation. I was wondering, as you described the process and the variations, is there still a role that OEHA plays in your considerations?
At this point in time, they do not have a formal role. However, we rely quite heavily on OEHA's expertise to review our technical documents, and they have been quite generous with their review of our materials. I will also say that we have collaborative meetings with the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment so that we can share topic areas and share information with one another.
And then just a follow-up question, as other agencies think of limiting various compounds in the environment or releases of various compounds, how does that affect some of the sort of front-end considerations as you think of things that you might be taking into your tent? How do you stay abreast of what other agencies are doing, both within California and around the country?
The how is actually a much more challenging question to answer, but I will say that the SCP program does take into careful consideration legislation and regulations that are going on in the state and at the federal level. And we also take into account work that's being managed by our sister agencies and BDOs. We have opportunities to share information across BDOs, and we do have meetings that are scheduled on a routine basis, for example, with OEHA, with the Air Resources Board, and with CalRecycle. And we tend to focus in on those areas in which we are doing current work. We have a number of longstanding relationships with partners across the state. Another way that we stay up to date with other policies that are going on is that we participate in multi-state work groups. So for example, we have a memorandum of understanding with Washington and Oregon State to share information, and that results in monthly meetings where we're information sharing and lifting up elements of common concern. We also participate in multi-state work groups, including those that are led by ECOS and other bodies that bring together states and local governments.
I suppose my ignorance just begets further questioning. Is there a way that you found to organize this vast universe of information that works for you within what can sometimes be some of our more historic data systems? Do you have places you're going in ways to store and retrieve information?
I will defer to Michael, who's been with the program longer than I am, and he's also a data expert.
I'm not quite sure about that. However, our program, I've been with Safer Consumer Products for 8 years. And very early on when I joined the program, it was evident that, that bringing data science skills to our program was going to be necessary to accomplish our mission. Deputy Christensen talked about our candidate chemical list. And yes, it's true that there are 3,000 individual entries on the list, but approximately 100 of them are chemical classes of groups, some of which contain hundreds, if not thousands, of individual chemicals. So that's why it was very important with the BCP that expanded our program, that we have a whole unit specifically dedicated to data science and looking for and leveraging large data sets from a variety of, across the gambit, from other government data sets, universities, you name it. I currently supervise our economic analysis and market research unit. Our work is heavily influenced by large data. Understanding how markets may shift with proposed regulations is very complex. And so we are working hard in conjunction with partners at OEIM to expand our data science capabilities, and we're always looking for new and better sources of data.
Thank you. And my last question, as various legislators may think about restrictions on particular consumer products or things that going as far as product bans, before you've worked your way through a process, do you sense that more and more legislators might come to you to ask advice and for your insights before they advance legislation?
That has been the trend in recent years. We have seen a significant uptick in requests for technical assistance from the Safer Consumer Products Program, and we've had the opportunity to analyze an increasing number of bills each and every year.
Thank you so much. Member Gomez, please.
Yeah, thank you. This was very insightful, so I really appreciate it. I just had two questions at this moment. One is the process in which you go into. Do you also look at the extraction impacts of some of these chemicals in terms of evaluation? I'm curious, or is it just the chemical, the product is here, and you're just looking at it from the impact of that?
Our authority allows us to look at the impacts of the chemical in the product across the life cycle. So not just the extraction, but also the end of life
That was
and the
gonna be my
disposal.
follow-up.
Yes.
Okay. And
So
is that what takes place?
that would vary based off of each of the specific product chemical combinations. So for each of them, the adverse impacts do vary across the life cycle. And so for some, we would explore that more thoroughly. And for others, we would focus in on the immediate health or environmental impacts of the chemical in the product itself. So I would say that's case dependent.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much, Member Gomez. Member Brostrom, please.
Had a number of questions. My familiarity with like this program, and particularly like some of the concerns you raised, which in my mind have kind of come down to two buckets. One is the time it takes to list the products, and then the other is how specific the products are in terms of capturing capturing the number of products that would be impacted. So those are kind of the two broad concerns that I've heard over the years about this program. And I know you addressed, particularly around the timing. But just to get a little bit more understanding in terms of, I heard you say that there's 9 products that have been listed to date. Over how many years did it take? Is that the 10 years that you were referring to, I think, in your presentation?
The first priority product would have been listed in 2017, or would have been proposed for listing in 2017. So we're looking at about 9 years.
Okay. And so have you done an analysis overall, like what's that approximately how long it takes? And I know you said there's been improvements over the years, but maybe in today's world, like how long it approximately takes from kind of the whole process to list a priority product?
We have done multiple evaluations, and unfortunately, there are so many interdependent variables for each of these. So one of the things that we're currently examining is the impact of too much concurrent work at the same time, because it splits focus and it splits resources. So the question that Michael and I are actually working on in a separate meeting is, can we achieve some efficiencies by focusing our efforts more thoroughly in a more concentrated time period on specific priority products. The hypothesis being that if we're spread thinly, we're moving slowly. And if we're focused, we can move more quickly. We have the data to support this, but that analysis is still underway.
I think you mentioned this a little bit, but I was interested to hear your perspective on trends, particularly around the timing, as well as any concerns or challenges that you have identified in, particularly around the time it takes to list the products.
When I first started last year, the concerns that I identified was that I felt that engagement was uneven throughout the program, and I wanted to encourage increased early engagement across our projects. I also wanted to expand the audience of groups that we were engaging with, and we have successfully done that this year, including in a quite meaningful way with the priority product work plan. The challenge in front of us right now is our efforts to move forward more efficiently, and that is our focus area for 2026. And the 4 areas that we are currently looking at involve things ranging from the products, like the number of scope, the number of products that we're taking on at one point in time. Are we spreading ourselves too thinly to be effective? We're also looking at how we can improve our review processes and improve the quality of our work so that the review itself goes by smoothly. We're also looking at staff strengths and expertise and how we can best play up to staff strengths. And I am forgetting the 4th element, but I do want to reassure you that this is actually our key focus for 2026. And we just had an all-staff meeting that was very successful where we got input from our team, and we wanted to have inspiration and ideas from the staff who've been doing this work.
Thank you. And then my other questions are more about, did you have anything to add?
I don't know if this was the 4th one, but we're also putting more effort to be strategic and to put time and effort up front before moving forward. That leads to better and more efficient outcomes in the long run.
My remaining questions are more about the metrics. So I saw that you listed some metric principles, and as I think the only remaining subcommittee member who was previously on the metrics team, thinking about our process and kind of hearing a slightly different approach. So I note that the principles that you outlined were different than the ones that I think were driving some of our decisions. There is overlap, but I think I noted a tension in terms of like who is making kind of these parameters between the board and DTSC, and I think that was something we struggled with in the last iteration. So I certainly appreciate this has to be by design a collaborative process, but wanting to maybe open the door for the board to also be involved in selecting kind of the principles that will drive the metrics. And I'm certainly happy to share, some of the ones that we were thinking about on our subcommittee. I don't think I'm going to be on this one, so I want there to be a transfer of information on kind of our learning lessons from our subcommittee on the hazardous waste program. And then, also did appreciate kind of the examples that you provided. But again, with the previous iteration, the subcommittee came up with its own and then went to DTSC. And so there was this back and forth. And so just wanting to, again, keep that process a little open. So rather than us just simply responding to your kind of recommended metrics, that there be more of a back and forth. So, I guess one of my questions was the metrics that you identified, are those things that maybe the program is already using internally, or if that was developed as a suggestion for the board to consider?
I'll just comment that we've started our meetings with the SCP group, and it has been extremely collaborative. So it hasn't been like, and we're changing up the process a bit. We're learning as we're going through program by program, and also depending on the program, we can't have like one fit all process, but it has been an extremely collaborative process, even the principles, the ideas behind the metrics. So I just wanted to, rest the board assured that it's an extremely collaborative process. It's not just a one way, these are the metrics. So.
Okay, well, appreciate that. And, just wanting to make sure and provide space for the board's input throughout.
And in this process, there has been a focus on not only examining our existing metrics and how they may be improved, but most of those 3 out of the 4 examples are completely new, because one of the things that we've realized is that our existing metrics aren't comprehensive enough to capture, a good view of our program and our performance. So by necessity, that requires new kinds of metrics in different ways. I would also add, we are being very mindful of the possibility of metrics causing unintended consequences. One example is the reason why we shifted the metric for the scope of our regulatory process from number of regulations proposed or adopted to number of products regulated is we realized that there could be some big efficiencies by combining multiple projects into a single regulatory package. And we don't want to limit to ourselves by adhering to a specific number or a metric when a different approach could better serve our mission.
Thank you, Chair Rakestraw. I had just 2 questions. Going back to the alternative analysis process, are there ever times where DTSC does the alternative analysis, or, a lot of these product categories, there's so much great work being done around the world and other entities. Is there a reliance on existing AAs that are already done, or where DTSC does it? I know that there's multiple different options for manufacturers to submit their AA, but is it always on the manufacturer?
Well, I'll answer that in a couple ways. First of all, manufacturers have the ability to use any existing publicly available alternatives analysis that's already out there, that's already in the public. And so the manufacturer can develop from scratch their own alternatives analysis, or they can rely on exactly what you shared there, that there is already good work that's being done by others. We're not like the state of Washington, which has a similar program, and the state of Washington conducts their own alternatives analysis. That's not how SCP is designed. But there is enough flexibility within our framework that we are considering whether there is the possibility for different ways of doing this. And SB 502 actually opened up this door and created a new way of thinking about this, because it allows us to rely on existing evidence of alternatives. And so we have been examining our AA process and looking for ways in which SCP can be both more involved and engaged, and also ensuring that our AA process is working to achieve the goals and mission of the program.
Great, thank you. And then my next question was just whenever there is a voluntary shift in the market. So I understand when there's rulemaking, you have the ability to test and see if there's a voluntary market shift to see, okay, are these products truly without the chemicals identified? However, if the rulemaking process hasn't happened yet, you have done the research on the chemicals and the products, is there an ability for you all to test at that point as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can test regardless of rulemaking. And we've done this in the past, for example, with nail products, because that early product testing actually informed the selections of future priority products. And so testing can come at any point in the process to either inform the priority product listing or to verify that the market shift has occurred.
Thank you so much, and I'll pile on a few more questions. Thanks for standing up there. First off, again, excellent presentation. Really appreciate, and like Swati said, appreciate the collaborative work that I, as the sole remaining subcommittee member, have with you all. And I know Sushma felt very much the same way. So a few questions for you. The first is, is there an ability, or have you found an ability to measure the impact of this, of the 9 product chemical combinations on other states? And basically, like, California is, of course, the 4th largest economy in the world. Is it de facto, one of a product is banned, a product chemical combination is banned in California, it's not being sold in other states as well? Like, can you claim that level of success, or do you just not have the data to be able to measure that?
Do you have the data to measure that?
I don't think currently we have the data to measure that. We have had instances where definitely our work has led to regulations and restrictions at the federal level. That obviously California is a big part of the overall market. I'm sure that there are in some places where it would be in business's best interest to make a California-specific version. But as of right now, we don't really have good hard data on impacts outside of California.
Thanks. And another question for you. I guess this goes to kind of how you are choosing the products. When one possible metrics that we could kind of, conceivably think about is like the number of people impacted through this process, or somehow some measurement on of the impact on the environment. But like, that kind of similarly has like a consequence to like how you are selecting the products. So when you're selecting the products, like, how much are you focusing on like this one product that like 1,000 people are using that is, very hazardous, very, toxic. Let's focus on that, versus here's another product that like 3 million people are using, but that's like, less toxic. Like, how do you grapple with those, pretty profound issues?
I appreciate that you recognize it's a pretty profound issue for us to grapple with. It is something that we think about when we are thinking about our overall portfolio. There are certainly acute exposures that cause a great deal of harm, and it is one of the reasons why in our upcoming priority product work plan, we are looking at things like occupational exposures and also exposures that would have disproportionate impacts among sensitive subpopulations like the developing fetus, pregnant people. But you're also right that there are a number of products which are in commerce that may be used widely, and the impacts are actually resulting from more chronic, longer-term exposure. And so we do have sufficient diversity within our project teams to accommodate both of those pathways, and we aim to do some of this work as part of that product category identification and as part of the prioritization process through research. So that is one of the reasons why the management team is involved in our product prioritization. So when a project team comes to the point where they want to propose a priority product, that's a really big discussion that occurs between all 3 branch managers, myself, and then eventually with the director and beyond.
Thanks.
If I may add, as a former member of the chemical and product evaluation branch before I moved over to core, when determining if something has the potential to cause or contribute to significant or widespread adverse impacts, we take into a number of factors, and including, for our potential for exposure, how many people are working. I think, or how many people may be exposed and what types of people. I would also say that potential to contribute to is also a big part of the power of our program. We don't have to prove that this specific product chemical combination is the primary cause of adverse impacts in order to take action. A huge part, in my opinion, a huge part of the benefit of our program is we're able to fill gaps where other regulatory programs may be focusing on air quality, and we may be able to come in and focus on another pathway that just currently isn't covered.
I'll ask one last two-part question, and then I'll turn it over to Member Gomez. The last, I'll do it together, is so I saw the report from last year about the compliance rates for toluene in nail products, and 95% were compliant. And maybe this is just like a resource issue, but like, there's of course the remaining 5%. Like, how much are you focusing you may not even want to comment about this, like your efforts to like kind of, removing that remaining 5% in commerce versus, focusing efforts elsewhere? Is it really just like a resource issue as like a general matter? I guess that's for the first part of the question. And then the second part of the question is, when you're thinking through these product chemical combinations, are you assuming the kind of proper use, like read the label of the product, or are you kind of asking, oh, well, if this were used in this slightly different way, and then like where do you even draw the line of like an improper use or an improperly directed use of a product?
Okay, let me answer the second question first. All uses, appropriate use and inappropriate use, are under consideration. We are looking for information and evidence on actual forms of use, not just as written on the label. I'm sorry, Chair Rakestraw, could you repeat your first question?
The danger of combining them, which is like for the compliance rates for example, toluene, like the 95%, and thinking through allocation of resources and efforts to getting that last 5% versus other enforcement activities.
So I think the important thing for our team is the stage of investigation. So that 5% that were not compliant requires a good deal of investigation in terms of why they are not compliant. And we are currently allocating resources for that work. One of the reasons is that particularly with products that are available for sale in a retail environment, we have to be very careful that we are analyzing a sample that was manufactured after our regulation went into effect and the requirements went into effect. There's other reasons as well. So for example, we may be reaching out and learning that the manufacturer was unaware of our regulations, but they aim to be compliant and want to be compliant. So I would say we lead first with that investigative step, and then supporting people through a compliance-oriented approach to get them into compliance. I don't have a magic number. I think some on my staff would say 100 is the only number that matters. But when it comes down to it, our team does need to make sure that Californians can trust that our regulations are working and that products are safer.
Thanks so much. And I think the final question will go to Member Gomez.
Thank you. And this was just a reaction to one of the questions in relationship to prioritizing of a product that might impact, because 100 people might be using it versus 1,000, and what the impact. Do you also take into account race and gender in the evaluation aspects? Because sometimes chemicals do have different reactions.
We do take into account different layers of impacts and how they might impact different portions of the demographic differently. If there are disparities, either biological or product use differences that we would identify that relate to race, that would be something that we would name in our technical documents.
Okay, thank you.
I don't have a question, but just more so a comment. As you all are strategically thinking about the direction of SCP, the one plug I would say is, and I think PFAS is a great example of this, right? Like broader categories, classes of chemicals. And I know that there's always this push and pull of specific product, specific chemical versus class of chemicals and just the impact that that might have. I know it's difficult, but just having a broader category when it comes to impact and good use of all of your time there's ways to kind of do both. So that would just be my plug of broader categories and broader class of chemicals. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. So we'll now open it up for public comment. So Sheena, will you please take us through that? Thank you again, both.
Thank you, Chair Rakestraw. We will open the floor for public comment regarding agenda item number 4, the Safer Consumer Products Program Overview. I will start with our in-person participants. Are there any folks in person that would like to comment on this agenda item? Seeing none in person. For those on Zoom, if you would like to comment on this agenda item, please raise your virtual hands. Seeing no hands raised on Zoom, I do have a comment that was submitted to read aloud. This comment is from Ivana Castellanos with PSR LA. Can you share more about the ability to require engineered safety measures or administrative controls to limit exposures? Are there examples of utilizing this option? Is there research currently taking place in best available control technologies, and is that shared with the permitting team? When a feasible alternative isn't identified and manufacturers provide funds for research and development of an alternative, what's the structure for utilizing funds? That completes that comment. Spanish interpreters, please let me know if there are any comments in the Spanish room. Thank you, Leticia. Chair Rakestraw, that concludes this public comment period.
Thank you very much. Yeah, Member Brostrom, please. I was not planning to reopen board discussion, but please go ahead if there's a comment you'd like to make.
Yeah, this is more internal for the board. I know we're launching the metrics conversations, and so I think the members that are not on that committee have limited access. So I just wanted to share with the whole board, things that I'm hoping that will be part of that discussion. One, I think we talked a lot about is the time. The time that it takes, and having that be a good measure and something that we want to see continue to reduce over time. So that would be one that would be important to me. And the other, and it has come up a few times, but the impact. I understand that it will be difficult and there's trade-offs, but I really, trying to figure out a metrics that we can actually see, the impact in terms of reductions in toxic exposure would be particularly important to me. And then the third thing is, I know we have shifted this process to have a presentation, in a public forum. I am particularly interested in hearing from members of the public on, other types of potential metrics to be included in the conversation at the outset. So I am hoping that, even if folks weren't able to participate today, that they will come back. And also there have been quite a few advocacy groups that have raised concern over the year about this program. And so maybe even doing some potential outreach at the outset to them to really understand what some of the concerns from different stakeholders, so that can be incorporated into the building of the metrics. So that would just be my recommendations for the board and the subcommittee.
Member Brostrom, thank you so much. You pretty much outlined what we're planning to do. So we are planning to have not only updates at our board meetings, but also just one-on-one discussions so that we can have more of a discussion about the metrics, hear from different groups, stakeholders on what they would like to see. We also plan to do workshops. And then in addition to that, I know the SCP program is complex. And so this is just an entry into that. So if board members would like additional briefings from the SCP team, we can certainly do that as well. But we do plan to have, robust stakeholder engagement as we're going through this metrics process and do additional workshops as well so that we can actually have a discussion about the metrics.
Great. Perfect. Well, thank you all so much again. So that concludes agenda item number 4. So we'll now move on to agenda item number 5, which is public forum for items that are not on the agenda. So we now invite all of our participants, either in person or on Zoom, to comment on items that are not on either yesterday or today's agenda for the board's future consideration. Board staff will record any action items and report back on these items at a future board meeting. Board staff will also share items with the DTSC senior leadership team. So, Sheena, please take us through that.
Thank you, Chair Rakestraw. We will now open the floor for public forum for items not on the agenda. And as a reminder, you can always submit your comments to us and questions at besinfo@bes.dtsc.ca.gov. Starting with our in-person participants, are there any folks in the room that would like to comment for public forum? Seeing none in person, Chair Rakestraw, for those joining us on Zoom, please raise your virtual hands if you would like to comment for our public forum. Seeing no hands raised, Spanish interpreters, please let me know if there are any comments in the Spanish room. Thank you, Aldo. Chair Rakestraw, that concludes today's public forum.
Thank you very much, Sheena. So we'll now move to effectively the last item, which is the review of action items. I will now ask Vice Chair Strauss-Hacker to please review the action items from yesterday and today's meeting.
Thank you, Chair Rakestraw and board members. Once I conclude this relatively short list, I'd like any corrections from you and then to turn to our executive officer for any additions and corrections she may have. Yesterday, we established our quorum at 12:30, and in Director Butler's leadership report, we didn't have any formal board votes, but we had 3 requests from Member Gomez, a request for a Cali, PA multi-agency Chiquita Canyon landfill briefing from Chair Rakestraw, a strategic plan outcomes report briefing for the board, a document that DTSC has completed, and from Chair Rakestraw, per the director's leadership report in goal 3.5, an artificial intelligence related briefing. If you go back to that particular slide for 3.5, Grant, it's AI related. Item 4 was our vote on the hazardous waste facilities operating permit for the Kettleman Hills facility, and the board approved that schedule. It passed 4-0. Item 5 was our board's evaluation of DTSC during the previous fiscal year. There were a number of comments that will no doubt influence how we approach the next such cycle, but the board did adopt the evaluation as drafted. It added comments that were made publicly in the meeting yesterday, and it noted the 30-day deadline for public comment, which per Ms. Brooks is a March 9th deadline. Item 6 was the CVCI report. The board approved that report, which will go forward to the legislature, and Board Member Gomez asked for a future, more targeted discussion with DTSC with regard to the universe of orphan sites. Item 7 was our EJAC update with Co-Chair Miguel Alatorre. Item 8, the board adopted the board meeting minutes from the July 14th, 15th, August 27th, and November 17th meetings. And at 4:27 yesterday, we continued our hearing to today. And starting with today's notes, we established a quorum at 9 with regard to, excuse me a second, the board's 2026 priorities. The board adopted those priorities and will continue to work through those with our executive officer. With regard to SCP, we, I think, had a really superb briefing, but we had some follow-up questions with regard to Chair Rakestraw's participation with our executive officer in the metrics formulation, with 3 specific comments made by Board Member Brostrom: the time it takes, the impacts in terms of reductions in exposures, and other public input at the outset. Those are the action items I have so far. Do board members have corrections? Swati, do you have additions?
No, I think you captured 99% of them. There's just one additional one. Chair Rakestraw also would like a briefing or regular updates about the governance subcommittee for priority 1.1 to establish an enforcement training program. But that's it.
An enforcement training program, sorry, I missed that. In
Agenda item number 3. Or Chair Rakestraw, did you want to clarify? Did we capture that request correctly? A briefing on the enforcement program? Yep. We'll go back to the recording and look at it.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the review of those action items. So that brings us to item number 7, which is the closing remarks and the adjournment of our meeting. We're a bit ahead of schedule. So that concludes today's board meeting. I'd like to thank our board members, and I'd like to thank our board staff. I'd like to thank the support staff here and joining us virtually as well for their excellent assistance. And they are all listed here on the slide right now. So really thank you for all your work and support. So our next board meeting is currently scheduled for March 18th to 19th in Montebello. We look forward to having you all join us there. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
seconded?
Sheena, will you please call a vote?
All those in favor, say aye.
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 That motion passes. The meeting is officially adjourned at 10:58 a.m.